I think it would be a mistake if people weren't getting together at least periodically. I think it's so important to, you want to have cohesiveness as a team. You want to know the people that you're working with. You got to see people. I don't care what the industry is. I think that that's important. So there has to be some sort of regular or semi-regular activities where people are getting, together.
Insurance dudes are on a mission to escape being handcuffed by our agencies.
How? By uncovering the secrets to creating a predictable, consistent, and profitable agency sales machine.
I am Craig Pretzinger.
I am Jason Feldman.
We are agents.
We are insurance dudes.
I mean, when you're looking for candidates to come into your office, it's nice to not just look in a 10-mile radius, to look, countrywide.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had people move all over the place. I mean, we were mostly New York City and LA centric, some very expensive, Santa Monica, actually, very expensive, places to live. You could live anywhere you want. Didn't matter. You could move to Boise or have a farm in Iowa and still do this. And you didn't have to pay the kind of rents, that you pay in the markets that we're in. And you still got paid, New York City, salaries.
That's awesome. Love it. So what are some tips for insurance agents going into this, forward and into this new world? What are we?
I think it would be a mistake if people weren't getting together at least periodically. I think it's so important to, you want to have cohesiveness as a team. You want to know the people that you're working with. You got to see people. I don't care what the industry is. I think that that's important. So there has to be some sort of regular or semi-regular activities where people are getting, together. And, it doesn't matter what your age is. You better up your technology game, because technology can, facilitate efficiency, profitability, greater careers, more time with your family, time to raise your kids, all the things that we didn't have before, less time in your car commuting, all that stuff. But I do think, in your industry, that people having face time, like real time together, is still important.
100%.
Yeah. And in the small, so a lot of insurance agency owners are these, 5 to 10 employees, smaller shop. Some are it's just one person, sole shop.
Yeah.
So if they have a location, it's challenging to have people not in the office.
Oh yeah.
And so what does somebody in that situation do, and how do they attract the top candidates? Are they in trouble now?
It's all a matter of perspective.
Sure.
I don't think so. Look, here's the thing about any industry. People don't work for me because they love me. I mean, a lot of people do. They like me a lot. I'm known in my industry. You will get mentored. I mean, I write books a lot of books on the very topics of what we do for a living. I can teach, and I love doing that. And I do think it's incumbent and a responsibility for me to do that. But it doesn't have to be. There are other ways to do it. It doesn't just have to be. Now, all that said, I had fancy schmancy offices. I got famous people coming in. It was a whole scene in my office of famous people, powerful people, big corporations. We had, fruit in the water cooler. It was a whole environment. That's not here. We don't have that anymore. And we are together less. But it is not impossible to do in any industry at all. But I do think there has to be some touch points. In the insurance industry, I do think people will have to come in some days, not every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, you could never recreate what you had in that office, right? With virtually. But going forward, it's like, I think all of us as individuals need to look at what ways can we recreate, not the same type of thing, but different experiences. Maybe it's more with family, but we have to be, conscious of creating an environment or multiple environments of experiences. Otherwise,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and so much of it depends on like life stages for everybody. When I was younger, I had kids. I realized kind of after I had my daughter, it's like, oh damn, I work a lot. How am I gonna, how's that gonna
yeah,
play itself out? What's the point of being a dad if you can't be a dad? And so, this is 30 some odd years ago. We opened up a nursery in the office. And unintended consequence of having a nursery, I did a nursery in the office, me and my ex-business partner from my first company. We both had kids at the same time. We both didn't want to just leave and see our kids on the weekends. But what we didn't realize in opening a nursery, which isn't easy, but we did it, was that there were so many moms out there who would be attracted to a place where they could bring their kid to work, because
that is so awesome,
and not put their career on the sideline. So I mean,
Dang.
a different time, brick and mortar example, and divided by life stage. So it does depend a lot on in my career, I've gone from the kid in the room who doesn't know anything to the old guy in the room who thinks he knows everything, and everything in between. So I've been, my kids are, they're older now. Life's different. I have a whole different set of priorities, but that's just me. And I also have different generations inside my office. How do you make it attractive to all? What adjustments can you make? So while nobody would have said, hey, Eric, yeah, you're not going to see your kid that much, we didn't think about it. We just said, hey, nursery in the office. Then New York City came to inspect our nursery. It was like, damn, we got a lot to learn.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I know in California, New York, a lot of regulation. So yeah. So what are some of those things that you're seeing these days that is the carrot, the attraction that you're offering your employees, or you're seeing a lot of other people offer that might be different than, years ago?
Well, when I was younger in the brick and mortar world, there was something in my age. It was called Eric School. It was basically one-on-one mentoring with me. It would always happen before 9 a.m. So made it less appealing to probably half the people. But the whole not losing the notion of mentoring, making sure that you have those touch points with as many people as you possibly can, not relying on the group Zoom, and thinking that that's, a real life experience, having more activities outside of the office when and if you can, not only giving the best technology that you can possibly get your hands on, but training on that technology so that everybody can use it. And, you do, I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm seriously interested in, artificial intelligence and how that's going to change the workplace. It won't matter what the technology is. I mean, computers were new 40 years ago. Email was a new phenomenon. The whole notion, 40 years later, that no, I don't need paper anymore. It's all, it's all on the computer. That's all new. But you need to give people all the tools that you can possibly give them. And, like with my employees, I did this with as many people as I possibly could. It was just another touch point. One employee buys a new house, a city person buys a new house and it snows. It's like, oh, now what? We send them a snowblower. One employee wants to exercise at home. We send them a riding bike. We tried to give and furnish employees environments so that it would be, not only attractive to them, but so that they could, kind of feel the love of the company.
That's
I like that. Idea. You found out something that they were interested in and then go out of your way to support that. That's pretty cool.
No, it's not, it wasn't, I'm not trying to buy anybody's affections, but it's a kind of
thoughtful, like doing something thoughtful for somebody. They appreciate it. Even
everything. Look, this is in general about life. Certainly as an employer is you make deposits in people's emotional bank accounts. Anything that you can do for them is a deposit. Not every day you're going to make deposits. Some days there's going to be withdrawals. Make as many deposits as you possibly can. The whole notion of loyalty and longevity, to me, is the difference between good and great companies. If you can keep people for a long time, and they're loyal to you, and there's the thing about loyalty too, is that people, they got to be compensated a little bit better than anybody else would compensate them, best you possibly can.
Awesome. I would love to ask you a few questions about leadership before you go.
Sure.
Because you've read a lot of books on leadership, and how would you coach maybe an insurance agent in leadership? And what are some of the things that you would focus on first?
This is my thing about leadership. And, my biggest book was on leadership. I was a longtime chairman of the Young Presidents Organization in New York City. And one of the things that I found fascinating about leadership, and this was after September 11th, there was like 10 of us. We were Dick Grosso. He was the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange. We were his guests in this royal conference room on, the top of the stock exchange. And it was a dinner. And we went around the table, and each one of us, and everybody in that room, except for me, you was kind of famous. You would know their last name. You got the soap, and their last name is the soap in your shower, sort of thing. And we went around the room, and everybody said, "What did you do?" This was on September 11th. What did you do? Because Dick Grosso had some crazy story. I mean, he had the world financial markets on his back if he doesn't get it up and running. And he's telling the story about going in the basement of the stock exchange, opening the door, and all the electric cords are dangling in the flood that's almost to the ceiling. They got to rehook up the whole stock exchange, otherwise the financial markets collapse. The story was fast. So as we went around the room,
no pressure,
right? No pressure. But as we went around the room, I realized everybody had such a different story. Everybody's the way that and it was that day that I decided to write the first leadership book that I wrote, because I wanted to find out how do successful people do it. What are the common denominators? What's the magic formula? And the magic formula is there isn't one. I asked the same questions to everybody. There was 100 people that I interviewed for that book. I asked the same questions. And I got 100 different answers to every question that I asked. And every single person was interesting. Every single person was successful. And you would know all of them in that particular book, but they all did it differently. And this is what I say about leadership is everybody says the buck stops on the leader's desk. The buck starts on the leader's desk. We're the ones who start. If I don't love what I do, by the way, I love what I do. It's not just, rhetoric or, a hashtag. Yeah. If I don't love what I do, nobody who works for me is going to love it at all. Everything about the way that people feel about the work that we do, it starts with me. And that's the case no matter how small you are or how big you are. Positivity, optimism is very contagious. When I was younger, I did a lot of crisis work. That's what I was known for. And I mean, for the Fortune 500, the really big crises, hopefully you never heard of any of them because we handled it accordingly. But, my whole thing about crisis, and I train people in this, is you walk into a fire with me to this very day, walk right in the middle of it with me. We will all walk out unscathed 100% of the time. People got to believe me to even walk into that fire. And, I'm 40 years plus, never got burned once. Your attitude is contagious. You wake up in the morning, you want to do, what you're doing for a living. It's not, I'm not being a cheerleader. I think working for a living would suck. I can't believe that I get paid for what I do. It's like, I can't believe it. It's like, I love this. Yeah. And everybody should love what they do. If they don't, they should have something else to do.
100%. Yeah. I love that. It's so true. And it's funny, all the conversations, the exit conversations I've had with employees have all been geared in the last 2 years, have all been geared around them not being happy. And like, why wouldn't they, you're not following what we're doing, and we love what we do. And if you don't love what you do, you got to find that, man. And usually that conversation leads to them exiting. I haven't had to fire anyone because of that.
I mean, the thing is and it's not like I'm not, I started a company when, I was 22 years old. I had to, truth be told, I wanted to wear sneakers to work, and all I needed to do was make sure I had rent and and could cover the bar bill, sort of. Everybody realistically, we got bills. Yeah. So we got to make money somehow, but there is a way to make a living that isn't work.
Right.
If you find your passion, and if you find your passion, you're never going to work a day in your life. It's so much better.
Love it. Any final words for any insurance dudes out there?
I still have a couple things. If you don't mind.
I guess I jumped the gun.
You did. Just let me, I'm curious just about this, because there's an adversarial relationship, at least maybe perceptually, there's an adversarial relationship between the employer and the employee, right? Because the employee comes and is trying to get the most amount of money and do the least amount of work to get that. Whereas the employer's final thing is to get the most amount of productivity for the least amount of cost, right? I mean, that's their fiduciary responsibility of the company. So how do you bring those two different opposing views together?
I've said this on, long before anybody was doing anything virtual, long before. I've been saying the same thing for. I don't care how many hours you put in the least. It's all about productivity for me. You get your job done. I don't care. I don't care when you work. I don't care what your hours are. You get your job done. You'll never hear. I'm not a micromanager. I was when I was younger. I might everything. I'm a type A. My organizational skills get me, time management, all of that. I didn't understand why everybody wasn't like me. And I would go into their offices and think, how do you get anything done in this? The office is a mess. So we did a study, this was about 25 years ago, of CEOs of the Fortune 1000. And we correlated their organizational skill set to their stock prices. And I knew what I would find is the more organized, the more successful. I found the opposite. So, I learned to adjust. There was something to be said for, a creative work environment. Didn't always have to look like,
Yes.
Yeah. It was called the messy desk survey. My desk never had a piece of paper on it ever. But I was exactly wrong, which was, eye-opening. But it's all about productivity and the understanding. I want people who work, I don't even say for me, who work with me. I look at us all as peers. Doesn't matter what our age is. I know the kids who work for me want to learn things from me. I'm definitely gonna make sure that I do that. But the understanding from day one is all you have to do is produce. As long as you produce, you will never hear from me. And look, this wasn't easier said than done. First 20 years, were a challenge. And I would say about life, the first 50 years were the hardest. I've been pretty good ever since.
Yeah. So, okay. Thank you. That's good. And then as a follow-up, for agents, like this is the challenge is agents are smaller. Sometimes the cash flows, it's a different situation than a large company, right?
Yeah.
So, but they still have to make similar decisions, and they have to be careful with screwing up because it could be detrimental, right? Hiring the wrong person could be detrimental to the whole thing. So I guess is a better strategy, and especially because a lot of them are sales, it's tough to give somebody a large salary, or the thinking is it's tough to give somebody a large salary as a base for sales, because then where's the incentive to write the business? Right. So where do you draw that line? Do you?
Oh, I think that, but kids who hustle.
Yeah.
And the difference between it doesn't matter what age you are. those who hustle versus those who don't. Like, it's not fair that somebody else has to do your job for you. And if your compensation is directly tied to how much you hustle, you decide. And I'm so amazed at what people can get done in a day when it's directly tied to their compensation.
Right.
You want to pay your mortgage and you want to have a nice car, or I don't know, whatever your toys of choice are.
Sure.
Diapers for the baby, whatever it is. Those who hustle will always make more, and those who don't won't.
Yeah, for sure.
So come to New York City. We'll teach you how to hustle.
We hustle. Last thing.
But look at you guys. Look at what you're doing. Like, you have this podcast.
Yeah.
That's a unique extra that you're doing in your industry. Yeah. How appealing does that make you to potential, employees and even to the people that they sell to? Yeah. I think this vehicle, which is a new one. I didn't used to do podcasts.
Right.
They pack a punch. I can't believe the influence that podcasts will have. And meanwhile, like this interview is an example. This will live on the internet forever.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm the most interesting guest in the world, but I bet you get some interesting guests. So the content that you're putting out there, which also attracts to you.
Right. Yeah, it's been great. We started it because we wanted to use it as a way to learn, right? And then share that knowledge with other agents. And all of a sudden, people started listening besides our moms. But it was years of doing it, and then it led to businesses and all kinds of stuff. So it's been really cool.
The thing too is that in this world, like I'm a guy who I've been in the news my whole life. I was on national television for a decade. Regularly. I was a political pundit after I left the White House. What I attracted because of my exposure, it wasn't insignificant. It was, and by the way, writing books definitely helped with that exposure. But, there was, one of the companies, I'm involved in a lot of entrepreneurial ventures that I had started, I don't know, a decade ago, was Good Morning America's. This was an e-commerce company that I was an investor and a partner in. We were Good Morning America's product of the year, whatever the year was. And I remember thinking like, oh man, my mom's going to be impressed by this. The same day that this is on, ABC, Good Morning America, Echo product of the year. This kid's name was Josh Spear. I'll never forget, because I was too busy to do an interview with Josh Spear. I was Echo product of the year. I didn't need to talk to Josh Spear. Somebody canceled. I do an interview with Josh Spear. He blew the article that he wrote, blew out our entire inventory in 24 hours. Good Morning America sold negligible.
Wow.
And the notion to see, this was a blogger before people really knew what blogging was versus Good Morning America. I say the same thing about podcasts. And the other thing about podcasts is that, I do a lot of these, and I'm constantly surprised by feedback that I get from places that I would never think I would hear anything about, than my mom. But he's kind of getting bored of watching me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think my mom watches anymore.
Awesome, Eric. You went the distance. Your upcoming book, when is that? Is that going to be out this year?
I hope so. We're having a few problems in editing.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
The audacity of silver linings. It's all about hope.
Love it.
Nice.
Super cool. Cool. Well, we'll be looking out for it. Eric, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So much for having me.
Yep.
Thank you.